Here we are with oil back to 68 approximate valuations. How powerful is OPEC given 1968 oil?
It's not. It wasn't powerful then, and it wasn't powerful. It's getting not to be powerful now and in the future. So OPEC was actually created just around then, and it was created partly because the U.S. was an exporting country, partly because the U.S. market was squeezing out oil from these new rising oil-producing countries.
My major question to you, Ed, is here's 1986, right in the middle of the chart. Boy, does this slope look a lot like 1986. If you're wrong, and Phil Verliger's right and others, and we break down below a 1968 valuation, what happens to Saudi Arabia in this fragile cartel in Vienna?
Well, I actually think we're going to get to below a 68 valuation. It's just going to be a little bit of a bumpy ride getting there. But this is a real problem. It's a problem not just for Saudis, but it's a problem for Russia as well.
I want to interrupt. This is critical. You're saying in a longer-term view, we're going to get back to pre-OPEC, pre-1960s, 70s valuation. What will that do to the kingdom of Saudi Arabia?
They're going to have to reform. And that's why they're trying to reform. They realize that oil is tending to be an asset that's stranded, and they don't want their asset to be stranded. So pumping at a higher rate sometime after the IPO takes place is going to be probably what is going to drive their policy, to squeeze out other oil, to make their oil survive, and to get their economy in order.
Right, but Ed, how can they do that without provoking social unrest?
Well, they can do it without provoking social unrest a lot better than some other countries. They see what's happening to the failed states in petro-state world, Venezuela, Nigeria. They don't want to have that happen, and they think their population, which has, after all, gone under a revolutionary change over the last 60 or 70 years, it's become an urban culture. It's a fairly passive set of people. They don't take to the streets the way they do in other countries, and they're hoping that the reform is going to enable them to get ahead of the game and stay ahead of the game.
And how can we be so sure that actually some OPEC countries don't start cheating again when it comes to compliance? Because that would really hurt credibility once again.
Well, one of the ways that keeps this gel together is capacity. There's really not much more capacity to squeeze out of most OPEC countries. And I think one of the reasons that this particular agreement is successful is that Iran and Iraq have really nowhere to go. The countries that could go somewhere, the ones that have oil supply disrupted, it's not likely Venezuela is going to see a reversal of their decline. It's not likely that there's going to be peace suddenly in the Niger Delta to see Nigerian production go back up 1 million barrels a day. And the only thing that's likely on the horizon is really Libya.
Does cheap oil back to pre-1968, does that completely disrupt any efforts over climate change? Does the microeconomics of oil buttressed into business and finance change the climate dynamic right now?
I think public policy can, at the margin, change the dynamic of climate change, but there are a lot of big things at work. The president has a coal plant. U.S. coal consumption is down from 900 million tons to less than 700 million tons. No board of directors of a utility is going to sanction a new thermal coal plant that's going to last 50 years. On the oil side, oil has become a transportation fuel. The transportation market is seeing competition. That competition comes from electricity, comes from natural gas, comes from efficiency gains. The prospect is for peak oil demand, not for peak oil supply. So you can have the climate change scenario unfolding, particularly because the cost of installing solar and wind is really competitive with baseload coal.